there, beautiful people. Welcome to the Unraveled Psyche, where we teach people to heal and engage in active change, one conversation at a time. I am Jemima. You can call me Jem, and I'm the founder of Unraveled Psyche. Unraveled Psyche is a platform where we try to establish a sense of community, one where stigma is lessened and being vulnerable is a strength. Vulnerability here is met with love, empathy, and warmth. And if you're someone who is like me, a human that is capable of making mistakes and having setbacks in life and struggling with mental health issues or struggling with life itself, I hope you see that this is a safe space and that you are welcome here. And it's okay to not mask your mistakes with a facade or something else. Vulnerability here is established and your mistakes are okay. So today, I welcome you to Unraveled Psyche's YouTube channel. It has been a long week for me because actually last week was supposedly the time where I released the first video of Unraveled Psyche, but there were certain issues that I've met along the way and it was very hard. One of the issues that I had was the video itself. I am not able to upload it because I had issues with the video. One part of it was corrupted, so I'm sorry for that, and I was very sad about it and exhausted because I was super excited and I even shared an announcement with you guys, and I'm sorry for that if I kept you waiting about it. But today is the part 2 of it, and I just want to tell you that maybe that was God's way of like telling me that I can do better, because that video didn't have a part where I was talking in front of the camera. I've actually been struggling with putting myself in front of the camera where I try to talk. So I kind of slid subtly back in my comfort zone. And maybe that's the reason why God didn't allow me to upload that video. But anyways, I am here and I am trying to break out of my comfort zone. So I hope you be gentle with me, guys, okay? Because the internet is just not purely a safe space. But here in Rebel Psych, we will try to establish a safe space. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but I hope you like this video. I hope you subscribe to this channel, support this channel, and leave a healthy, helpful comment for everyone or others or myself. And I hope we'll build each other up as you are part of this community as well. If you're new here, I think everyone's new here because this is the first video, so welcome, and I hope you learn. As I am a mental health professional, I also aim that every conversation should be met with love and light, and also learning, which is why I said love and light, because educating with love is very important, and educating is giving someone light when there is darkness around that person. As a Christian also, I hope that this channel will be helpful for you as you try to journey in life. And Unraveled Psyche is a psychoeducational site where we feature psychology and spiritual integration. So there is such approach, and this is what Unraveled Psyche is. So let's cut to the chase. Wait, it got tangled in my hair. Last week, we were able to talk to someone who is fully equipped with regards to talking about mental health decline, and she actually has been very insightful for us. If you want the full interview, you can actually listen to it on different streaming sites. I will put some pop-ups here where the screening sites will be, because I just know that it's in Anchor and Spotify and Google Cast, but there are a lot of streaming sites as well. So yeah, and now we will be listening to part 2. But with that, let's do an overview. So Dr. Gardner is a clinical psychologist from the United Kingdom that I was able to actually talk to. And Dr. Gardner has been very insightful with the things that she shared to help us become aware of what is happening, and that is the mental health decline. And while we're actually focusing on the fact that the COVID-19 or the coronavirus is affecting us physically, it's also affecting us psychologically. And it's hard sometimes for us to keep safe and sane. And right now, I understand, just like me, that we have been very anxious with what is currently happening in the world. Aside from the pandemic, there are a lot of issues that have been happening here in the Philippines and the other countries, like racism and Black Lives Matter, everyone, okay? The terror bill. Let's junk that terror bill. And other issues with regards to the government and humanity, not just here in the Philippines, but also in different areas and countries. As we try to not zoom out or pan out of the issues, we are going to focus right now on the pandemic that is happening. And as the World Health Organization stated, that there is a mental health decline happening since the beginning of this outbreak. And it's actually supported by credible sources or articles featured by different news reports. We can see that in different areas and countries, there has been a spike or increase of domestic violence and abuse. Since the beginning of this pandemic, the United States of America also reported that there has been increased calls of distress and suicide hotlines. So there is real mental health decline. And Dr. Gardner stated how stress happens when there is not enough resources for you to be able to cope with what is happening or what you are experiencing. So stress is anxiety provoking. When we talk about anxiety, it can affect us starting from our thoughts, through our feelings, and then manifest through our behavior. We also talked about how stress is individual. I asked her, how can we be able to know if someone is in distress or is stressed? And she told us that stress is individual. And as stress is individual, there's no standard with how one person responds to stress. A person might be able, like she said, a person might be able to overeat, a person might not eat, a person might oversleep or not sleep, or a person might not be affected, while other people will be very affected. So stress is very individual. And lastly, we also talked about the differences of grief and depression, because grieving the normalcy that we once had is natural, and it's a natural reaction. And Dr. Gardner actually shared a wonderful explanation of it. So here's the explanation.
Grief, again, it's this really normal human emotion, and we feel our experiences deeply, and when life changes with very little warning, it's a shock. We haven't been able to live our life in the way we normally would. As you say, we've got to keep social distance from the people that we love, and it's really confusing. I've enabled my 4.5-year-old son to see his granny because he's old enough to understand that he can see her, but he needs to keep his distance. My 2.5-year-old, we haven't done that yet, because she would be outraged and so upset that she could see Nanny, but she couldn't cuddle her or sit on her lap. We're still figuring out how to do that. Get what we can call anticipatory grief as well. So for sometimes actually people might be really worried about the future economic impact or the impact on their job. Will I have a job to go back to? What will happen to my business over time? Are you familiar with Kessler and Kubler-Ross? They wrote about the 5 stages of loss or grief. It's about passing through the different stages. They talked about denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. And subsequently they've actually added a 6th stage of finding meaning. And we've probably experienced many of them in the recent weeks and months during the pandemic. So denial might have looked like, well, I'm young and healthy, this virus isn't going to affect me. Anger could have been, the government should have locked us down earlier. Bargaining might be, okay, I'll do all the hand washing and the social distancing, but then we need to we'll be okay, and we can go back to normal. As long as I do this, this will happen, won't it? Sadness might be, I can't believe our holiday is cancelled, I was really looking forward to that. And acceptance, more like, well, this is hard, but I can learn to use Zoom to speak to my family. This is going to pass. And even finding meaning, I think there are people, and there's some narratives and talk coming out of this of people saying, well, I found out what's important to me. And some of what I've learnt, I want to keep hold of even when lockdown finishes, because I've learned something through this experience, even though I would never want this to happen to my culture, to my nation in terms of the deaths, or to the world. I wouldn't want this, but I've still learnt stuff through it. And you asked about where, so grief, really normal. It's going to be happening to people now and in the future around COVID-19. But you asked about, is there a limit where it becomes depression? So if you're using DSM-5, which is one of those like big dictionaries of mental health that I mentioned earlier, then it's about the consistency. So depression, it's not about the intensity of feeling depressed or down, but it's about the consistency of feeling that way most of the day, nearly every day for at least 2 weeks. And alongside that will be a list of other symptoms, confusingly some of which overlap with grief. So for example, you might have disturbed sleep, but you could have that if you're feeling grief. You might be feeling hopeless, but part of grief might be feeling hopeless as well. For many of us, grief is probably more accurate as a way of describing how we feel, because we don't have this consistency. We shift through the stages, and you can flip as well. You might have a sadness phase, then feel a bit more accepting, then flip back to anger. It's not a linear, you don't journey through it like that and come out the other end. You kind of bounce around a bit and you might move from one stage to the other. So I'm not saying depression isn't possible, and those who've experienced depression in the past might be more at risk at this time of a relapse. But I think it's really important that we don't pathologize all sadness and all loss and grief as full-blown depression. If someone is experiencing that consistency most of the day, nearly every day for at least 2 weeks, it would be really important to speak to a family member, seek help from your doctor or a counsellor or a psychologist to try and separate out whether it's depression or grief, because how you might respond to them may be subtly different in the help that you might need or benefit from. When we talk about things, that's part of the process of therapy, is you're getting it out from your head, and you're forming a more coherent narrative, finding a way of putting it together in a way that makes sense. And there's a lot of power, actually. Even that in itself is therapeutic, being able to get it out and go, okay, I can see that this makes sense, it hangs together. It might not be comfortable or easy, I can interact with it, rather than it being something that feels completely overwhelming and completely stuck inside your own head.
So there you have it. Now that you know the definition, now that you know that there is a mental health decline, what is going to happen? Of course, this platform doesn't just leave you with definitions or explanations. As much as possible, we try to establish techniques so that you can pick these up, learn it, and apply it in your life, so that you can also do it. Not only that, but I hope that once you are informed, once you're applying it, you also get to advocate for other people as well. And I do think, just like surgeries, that's how we are able to solve mental health problems. We try to open the wound, check for infections, and then try to heal it without giving you supplies of how we can be able to cope with what we are feeling. Then I'm just leaving you with another possible situation where you can overthink, and it's not good for our mental health. So today, I will be featuring Dr. Kat Gardner again, who has been very gracious with regards to the knowledge that she has, and has been very graceful with the answers that she gives. The first part is that as we're experiencing distress, psychological distress, we exhibit negative emotions. So how do we cope with such feelings? Here is Dr. Kat's answer.
I'm going to talk you through a framework that is not my framework, I must say. So this is have you come across Russ Harris? He's a therapist and trainer in ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. It's like a next generation therapy on from that. He talks about face COVID, with each of the letters standing for something different. So the F is focus on what's in your control. So in any crisis, it's normal, as we've said, to feel fearful, overwhelmed, to get stuck in worry. But we might long to be able to control our thoughts and feelings and squash them down. But it's also very, very difficult, if not impossible, for us to control our feelings fully. But what we can control, there are different things. We can control the amount of time we spend on a screen or scrolling through the news. We can also prioritize making healthy choices, how much we connect with our friends, how much we get outside and go for a walk if that's allowed under your lockdown rules at the moment, or even just standing outside where you live and being able to feel the fresh air. One thing he talks about often is emotional storms, which I think is a really helpful analogy, because we're going to get emotional storms in a crisis because we are emotional creatures and we feel things. But what can be helpful is to actually drop anchor, to anchor ourselves in a storm.
The next part is actually great. Dr. Kat was able to teach me with a grounding technique that I think can be helpful for you as well. Here is the part.
So I'm going to actually talk you through the next bit, but I'd like you to do it with me, because the best thing to do, and I encourage your listeners, if they're listening, to do it with me as well, because this helps. So the next bit is the ACE bit. So it's acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. So you think about what is showing up right now. So if I get in contact with my feelings are probably, there's a little level of anxiety. I'm talking, this is going to be recorded. How is this going to come across? And also I'm asking you to do something with me, live recording. So we acknowledge there's some anxiety. And but what I want you to do is I want you to come back into your body. So the feeling of anxiety is with you, but come back into your body. And we do that by you push your feet into the floor. So feel your feet on the floor, push them down a bit, and actually straighten your back and spine. So sit up straight in the chair you're in. And it can be also really helpful if you put your fingertips together. You can push your arms out, shrug your shoulders, and just breathe slowly. And while you're doing that, acknowledge that feeling. So that anxiety is still there. We're not trying to escape from it, but our body is here. I can feel my fingers pushing. I can feel my feet in the floor. And then the next part, so that's the C, come into your body. The E is engage in what you're doing and look around the room. What's here? Can you name me 5 things that you can see in your room? And what can you name me 2 or 3 things that you can hear? But anything that you can smell or anything that you can taste? What's your relationship with that feeling like now? Is it the same? Is it different? Yeah, the anxiety's there. I can still notice it, but my attention is far more in my body. When you notice things, you get, as you say, you get grounded in your environment, you get grounded in your body, that your body is here. That exercise is called dropping anchor, and it can be helpful to do that 3 or 4 times in a row if you need to turning it into about a 2 or 3 minute exercise. We realize that actually we are still present, we are still here, and it helps shift that relationship with the anxiety. It helps change that feeling from being utterly overwhelmed to, as you said, that interesting that you use that feeling of lightness, that had that effect for you. And then the last bit is COVID. So committed action. What can I do right now, no matter how small, that improves life for me, but also my community? There's great research out there that says that actually one of the best ways to improve our mental health, reduce our anxiety, is to do stuff for other people. It could be as simple as doing shopping for a neighbour, ringing someone to check in on them, smiling when you see someone cross over the street from you. O is for opening up, making room for difficult feelings and treating ourselves kindly. Because I don't know about you, but it's been really easy sometimes during this to go, I just can't do this, I can't manage, this is too hard, I'm just so rubbish at this. But actually we need to treat ourselves kindly and actually give ourselves emotional space to make room for these difficult feelings, and to not speak to ourselves in a way that we wouldn't let other people speak to our loved ones. Easy to say, hard to do. What do you want to stand for in this crisis, the person you want to be, and letting that guide your behaviours. And that's, again, so instead of almost like the anxiety telling you what to do, if you think about what your values are and let that guide your behaviours, that leads you into doing things that are more meaningful for your life. Doing that tends to improve your mood and give you a better life than if you listen to anxiety and let anxiety tell you what to do. I is for identify resources. There are probably resources in your family, your friends, your community, faith groups, health professionals, but also reliable sources of information about the pandemic. There's a lot of stuff out there that isn't accurate and isn't helpful to listen to, and it will raise your anxiety as opposed to actually helping it. And some people find they need to really limit how much they're accessing this information, because it's churning over in their minds. And the D goes back to disinfect and distance. The safest way to reduce the spread of COVID-19 is the basics that we all know about. So we need to go back to what we can control, washing our hands, keeping social distance. And I understand from our conversation earlier that in the Philippines, you don't have many options to test, which must be really stressful and difficult actually, because we can be asymptomatic and we can be going around thinking that we're fine. Make sure that even if we feel well, that we're still practicing really good hand hygiene as my 2.5-year-old would say, cough your elbow, and practice social distance. It's simple, but it is something we can do.
And lastly, not only are we just dealing with certain emotions that we're having, but we're also dealing with other people's reactions. So how do we cope with other people's behavior? Here's an insightful clip for you.
It's recognizing that we're all different. We all, even people we know well, we're all struggling, is a really important first step. And if someone does become negative or argumentative, it's really helpful to remind yourself that what you're seeing is you're seeing their emotions in action. So there's a great phrase of kind of all behavior is communication. So if someone's behaving in a certain way, it can be really helpful. What's that behavior communicating to me? What's it showing me about maybe how they're feeling or what's going on for them? So you might be seeing that someone's behavior might be showing you they're stressed, or that they're anxious, or that they're experiencing loss. And it might be helpful later on in a calm moment, because actually to be able to discuss our feelings, if we try and do it when we're in the middle of them, it can be, especially if we're quite angry and agitated, it can be quite hard. It's better to wait until we're both calmer to be able to talk. And then when we do talk, it's helpful to use phrases like I feel, rather than you did or you always. So it might be easier to say, well, I felt hurt when you snapped at me earlier, but I also felt concerned about you. I know this is really stressful for both of us. Naming the emotion is really helpful, especially with small children and with adults actually. And then thinking, well, you could say, well, how can we get through this together? Because again, that's about putting people on the same team. Because when people are irritated with each other, especially if it does get into accusations, we end up kind of splitting into separate factions. But it's also really important to recognise that for some people, home isn't safe, and COVID-19 has been really stressful, really destabilising. And for some people, they're more at risk of domestic abuse. And it's really important to say, even under COVID-19, this is never okay. And I understand from talking to you earlier that there are things in the Philippines such as the Violence Against Women hotline, or reaching out to the Department of Social Welfare would be a good step if you're under that situation and you need that type of support.
So today was actually a great day. Through the interview, we have given you something that can be able to help you when you are feeling or struggling. And this is also Dr. Kat's last words for you guys. I hope you take it to heart, and I hope you be able to use it in your life.
I think it's a strange time because we are more united globally in this than we have been, I think, for a long time. This is something that's affecting us across the globe, no matter the language we speak, the amount of money we have in the bank or don't. So there's a unity in that, and people are not alone in their suffering. But it's easy to feel that way. You can feel really alone, you can feel stuck. But there are also people out there who are going to want to help. There's personality once said, when he was interviewed about crises and difficult things happening, about feeling overwhelmed when you look at a terrible situation, what do you do? And he talked about looking for the helpers, that there are always people who want to help, and to look for them because that will encourage you. And I think when you're in the middle of a pandemic, reach out to your family, to your friends, to other resources in your community, faith groups, health professionals, etc., because there will be some help that you could access. And if you're feeling that you're maybe you're having bad days and good days, I certainly have my bad days and good days, but if you can be a helper, if you can reach out and help, if you can keep your eyes out for those in need, that will make a real difference. And you never know who you're going to impact just by letting someone go first, or smiling at them as you're queuing to use the shop, or having a little conversation. You don't know what impact that's going to be. And I think it's also important to recognise that this is going to pass. This is not going to be forever. We don't know what the future is going to be like, and that can be incredibly anxiety provoking. Okay, it's about recognising all of this is okay. We can find ways to manage it. We can help. We can find help when we need it. And this is going to end. And I think that's a really important thing to hold on to.
So there you have it. Today was a very educational day, and despite this lengthy video, I really hope that you learned something. and I hope you come back and try to learn with us again. Thank you so much for watching Unraveled Psyche, and I am Jem, and it's very nice to meet you. See you again!